It's your friendly math tutor, Miss C here, to convert general form of a quadratic function to vertex form by completing the square. So I've made several videos on this where A is 1, and what you're going to notice about this video is, in this case, A, which is right here, is 2. So we are going to complete the square when A is 2. As a reminder, this is the form we are trying to get our equation into, and the reason we do that is because we can very easily find the vertex when our equation is written in vertex form. And that's a really important point on the graph of a parabola. So let's go ahead and get started. The first step I always like to take is to divide my equation into two sides, the left side and the right side. That's because what we do to one side in math, we do to the other. So I am going to start by moving the constant term to the other side. My goal is to get the 2x squared term and the negative 20x term on its own side. And I'm going to do that by moving over the 40. To do that, I'm going to subtract 40 here because moving something over is really just fancy speak for zeroing it out. Okay, on the left side, I now have y minus 40 equals. This is where things get different because you're going to notice that this 2 is still hanging out attached to my x squared. So the next step I'm going to take, I'm going to rewrite again now that it's simplified, is I need to factor the 2 out of the two terms on the right side of the equation. So I'm going to write a 2 here. And when I say factor out, it means I'm going to divide it from each term. So basically, I'm going to say I have 2x squared, and I'm going to divide it by 2. When I do that, I have 1 times x squared, which is x squared. I'm going to do the same thing for the next term, which is negative 20x. And you might be able to do that in your head. And in case you can't, I'm going to write it here. When I divide negative 20 by 2, I get negative 10. And then I still have x being multiplied. So I get negative 10x. All right, so that is the big difference when you are converting into general or vertex form when you have a leading coefficient. Now we go back to our process where we look at our b term, which in this case is negative 10, and we cut it in half, or we divide it by 2. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And then, as I've said before in a number of other videos, this is completing the square because we're making a perfect square. So that means I take that negative 5 and I square it. I am going to get out always when I square this part a positive number. If you ever get a negative number out, you did something wrong. So I have added 25 here, and I'm going to close my parentheses. All right, now this is where we have to be really careful because in a normal completing the square situation where the leading coefficient or the a value is 1, we can just add 25 to both sides and we're good, but we're not going to do that. So I want to go through something really quick. So if I were to distribute 2 into here, I should get 2x squared, which I did. So I factored that out, right? I should get 2 times negative 10x, which is negative 20x, which I did. I have to also distribute this to the third term. So I haven't just added 25 to this side, I've added 25 times 2. So now 25 times 2 is what I've added to the right side. That's 50. So I need to add 50 to the left side. So I'm going to do that here. Okay, so let's go ahead and simplify. On this side, I have y plus 50 minus 40 is 10 equals 2. And now we're going to set up our binomial to be squared here. And when I do that, remember I always start with x. And I'm going to take the square root of 25, and that number goes here. So it's always the square root of that term, which is 5. And then the sign that goes between x and 5 is always going to be the term that's in the sign that's part of my b term. So in this case, it's a subtraction sign because remember, when I distribute out x minus 5 times a quantity of x minus 5, I need to get a negative 10x. I can't get a negative 10x if I don't have a negative sign. So that's why we do that. Now, to get this into vertex form, you're going to notice if we look over here again, that y is on its own side. So I need to get y by itself. So the way I'm going to do that is I am going to subtract 10 from both sides. And then I'm going to end up with y equals 2 times the quantity x minus 5 squared minus 10. Okay, this is vertex form. We did it. We completed the square and got this in vertex form. As a reminder, we write things in vertex form because we're trying to find the vertex. And the vertex represents the lowest or the highest point on a parabola. So let's go ahead and find the vertex. So to do that, we are looking for what makes this binomial equal to 0. So the question we have is, what does x need to be so that that binomial makes 0? If you said 5, you are correct. 5 minus 5 is 0. 0 squared is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. And then look, we're just left with the y term, which is negative 10. So the vertex on this parabola is 5, negative 10. When I look at my a value, it is a positive number, which means my parabola is an upward facing parabola. It looks like this, like a U, okay? With the lowest point on the graph being at 5, negative 10, right? And the 2 means that it's a little steeper than if a was a 1. So this vertex represents a minimum because it's really this point right here. All right, we did it. We completed the square when a is a value other than 1. We found a vertex form, we found the vertex, and we identified it as a minimum. Thanks for joining me as we completed the square and found the vertex. Make sure to subscribe for more videos. Till next time, remember, you've got this.